Today's video has to do with Mercury retrograde happening in the sign of Capricorn. I'm going to talk about some important dates, bring up a couple charts, explain a couple things. Then towards the end, I'm going to add what it means for each rising sign, and you'll be able to click down below for that. Very brief, very simple, as it should be during a Mercury retrograde. So let's pull up the first chart. Here is actually the point in time where Mercury does go retrograde. Here it's 1:31 a.m. Pacific time on the West Coast, December 29th. You could see here, down here, Mercury is in the sign of Capricorn and next to Venus. We'll get to that in a second. But this is the time it actually stops and starts to go backwards. Capricorn deals with practicality. It's an earth sign and deals with the seriousness and straightforwardness in matters. It wants structure and pillars and practicality to form these things for things to stand upon. In this case, when we're dealing with communication and the planet Mercury, which deals with contracts and things that go from point A to point B, communication, so on and so forth, in the sign of Capricorn, there is a negotiation happening and a straightforwardness that's needed. So there's going to be a review process here the next 3 weeks in the Capricorn part of your chart with Mercury. But we start off this retrograde with the planet Venus conjunct Mercury. So off the bat, this is negotiation, seriousness, practicality, looking for foundations and analyzing them in the relationship vessel and story. So it's not just communication, it's relationships. And when I say that, it's relationships of all kinds. And you can really pinpoint this by looking in your chart to see where Capricorn falls. Now, this is going to last 3 weeks, Mercury moving backwards. And when we get to a couple dates, actually in January, it starts to move forward again. So you have to think about this as a review process, re-looking, reviewing, reintegrating. These are all retrograde words in the sign of Capricorn through Mercury. And Mercury is going to make several other different types of relating stories with several other planets, even off the bat within the first week of this. Okay, so, but off the bat, we're looking at Venus and Mercury here together in Capricorn. This is like if a negotiation is happening at the table. There's contracts there, there's to-do lists, but here we don't sign the contracts if possible. And if we do, we have to tell ourselves that we're going to have to review some of those things. So if you have time to review during the next 3 weeks, that's what you do. If you have to make certain decisions in this realm and area, know that there's something that you might have not seen or miss, or something that's going to come in out of the blue that you're going to have to add to the negotiation, add to the contract, or in a sense, reintegrate into the situation. Now, here's an interesting day because we're at the end of the year here. And, I'm going to say this. Last year at this point, from 2021 into 2022, Venus was in the sign of Capricorn and started its own retrograde cycle. There's a connection to last year here and into the winter of 2022. And so you're going to see some themes pop up. So that's another thing for your homework to look at. If you're going to look at the Capricorn part of your chart, if you want to go back to looking where things were last year at the end of the year into January into February, there's a connection going on here, okay? Okay, so that's an important date there. This particular point at 24 degrees is huge. Another point happened several weeks ago. It happened on December 12th, actually, when Mercury went into what they call its shadow phase. It hit 8 degrees Capricorn. And I say this because this 8 degrees Capricorn is going to come up again here within several weeks because Mercury goes backwards. Here we're at 24 degrees. It's going to start its backwards progress, but it's going to deal with this 8-degree realm. So really, you can look to December 12th as part of this whole cycle, and then so on and so forth thereafter. Okay, so let's bring up a couple things. Right off the bat, I can't get away from this one. It is, you have this Venus Mercury, but if you look here, there's Pluto at 27 degrees, which means Venus here within a couple days, which is actually like January 1st, is going to be together with Pluto. So what is the conversation that's happening this week and in the beginning of this retrograde is going to move forward on the weekend when the year changes, when Venus meets Pluto. And now there is a power struggle going on here. And this is still connected to last year this time and January last time. So there's a power struggle in relationships. So something this is going to be carried forth through the retrograde. So a lot of times you see power negotiations. A lot of times you see resources are involved here with the Venus-Pluto story too. Venus ruling money and resources, mostly relationships. So there's power dynamic going on, so on and so forth. Sometimes there's a brutal truths that are coming through because Mercury's involved in this too. It's the communication through there, and you have to get through those things to establish deeper bonds possibly, or actually the severing of bonds eventually. In power struggles, sometimes it could be a win or lose situation, but if we think about it within communication and relationships, stuff is in stories are being thrown onto the table, the negotiating table, and people have to figure this out, and it's hard. So I just want to say that. I want to say January 1st. Not only that, when we get to January 1st, and actually let me bust a move here, and I'll just show you on a chart here. So I just so you get the visual proponent of it. So I'm going to move to January 1st here, and now you could see that Venus Pluto story I'm talking about here on the 1st. But what you also see and what happened New Year's Eve, December 31st to January 1st, was Mercury making a sextile to Neptune. Now, with everything I just set this up for, now all of a sudden within 24 hours, something building is this creativeness of Neptune, the fantasy of Neptune, the bursting of boundaries of Neptune. It's having its effect on Mercury in a tightly a tight window. It's not there forever, but it needs a little bit of coaxing. But here's some creativeness through the word. So there's a little bit of a break here from the intensity and the seriousness of Capricorn that happens in the beginning here on the 29th and within days until the weekend for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So you have this power struggle going on. You have this communications. Maybe some mishaps are already happening because that's what happens during retrograde, miscommunication, so on and so forth. You have Neptune and Mercury together adding creative value to words and the intuitiveness that's coming through Neptune into Mercury. At the same time, you could see how words get lost here because of the fantasy and fog of Neptune and what it could do to Mercury. There's the seriousness, and then there's the thing of not wanting to be serious. So how long does it last? How solidifying are the words that happen that weekend? And that also is brought forward into the retrograde cycle for the next 3 weeks, and it's going to play itself out. And there's surprises coming with this, as always with retrogrades. But there's something that happens this weekend that throws a little bit of a shade, maybe even a little bit of romance, maybe a little bit of something that kind of tries to soften up the seriousness of the retrograde in Capricorn, but it doesn't mean it's long lasting. So pay attention to what's going on and the words are being used, but also take a step back and use the practicality of Capricorn. Use this retrograde cycle to do that review process, to gut check it, to check it 2, 3, 4 times. Were the words that were said that weekend and so on and so forth afterwards, was it really serious? And did they add to the rebuilding and restructuring during the retrograde in that part of your chart? So that happens, interestingly enough, December 31st into January 1st. I'm going to skip over to an event that happens. It's going to be on right here, January 7th happens here. And this is the midpoint of the Mercury retrograde cycle. This is an approximation here. I think I picked 4:38 in the morning here, right here on this video, but on this graphic. But basically, here now, Mercury is together with the sun. This happens every Mercury retrograde, where Mercury is going to pass through the sun, conjunct the sun, as they say. And other places they say cazimi, and it's more defined, the cazimi word, of what that really means. But basically, we get to the essence of this Mercury retrograde. And when Mercury passes through the sun, there's like a purification process that goes on with Mercury into the sun. The sun and its heat boils down Hermes, Mercury, to its essence, to what it really is. And a lot of times you will hear in public realms about don't do anything during Mercury retrograde, or if you can try to avoid this, do that. It's partly true, but we can't avoid life and decisions that we have to make. But if you were to make a decision, and if you were having to sign something, or if you were having to do something that was a little bit more solidifying that negotiation that I've been talking about, it's that day. And so when Mercury is there at the midpoint of this, there is some super clearness that is there. And it might not be so obvious, but as if you were to be rooted into a decision, planting a seed into the decision during the retrograde process, it would be here on that day, January 7th, and around that time. So some astrologers, if you are out there or follow astrology in a deeper level and you're getting newsletters, just pay attention. I'll bet you that day you're going to see people announcing stuff during that particular hour or 2 hours, because it's the heart of something and it's going to come across clear, the clearest it can be technically through the Mercury retrograde. So I take advantage of things like this. I got to remember to push something out there, but it's a good time just to clarify, at least just to go, okay, I'm midway through this. We have the rest of the retrograde cycle, and then thereafter the space that's going to be transverse again, to get some like perspective. Okay, so that happens on January 7th, and what's building actually on that day is something else. And Mercury is also building towards where's Uranus here in this chart? Here's 15 degrees Taurus, Uranus and Taurus, and it already in the sense happened because it's going backwards at 16. That means Mercury's going to go back to 15. So that day, the 7th into the 8th, and I'll just boom the chart there, you'll see Mercury making a trine, which is a connection to Uranus in earth signs. And here is an ingenious out of the blue idea that's continuing of this story. And I find it fascinating that we're having multiple aspects that are happening with Mercury, whether it was New Year's weekend or here we are with the conjunction in the cazimi space, that you're having multiple factors and spice thrown in, not just Mercury and the sun, but Mercury, the sun, and Uranus in a sense. So unexpected mind flow ideas come here. The new ways, new innovative words, ideas, perspectives at looking at a situation, at the story of Mercury retrograde in Capricorn happens, the 7th, the 8th, into the 9th. So, and also Uranus deals with surprises, things that come out of the blue, and things that may be coming out of the blue through words, through the exchange, through the physical exchange, through how something gets from here to there. It's not just words, they're emails, it's technology, those types of things. There's some electricity going on in here and unpredictability. And so hopefully, in this sense, a trine is a flow between the two planets. It needs its muscle flex and some focus, but when you're in that spot and you're in that zone, it's there. So to take that day, the 7th, that I mentioned in January, into the 8th, this is a prime time to really say the clearness in that negotiation, the foundational words, the foundational relationship that's being dealt with in Capricorn, the seriousness and the practicality that I mentioned earlier before, it's almost in a sense has some solidification here. It still needs to be sharpened and carved a little bit more, but the base core center is there. And not only that, it's actually somewhat refreshing. And refreshing, that word doesn't necessarily come into play when you explain the key words and descriptions and adjectives of Capricorn. But Capricorn needs it in all this, and we're thankful for Uranus and Taurus here. So there's a date there. We get to, I'll bust a move here. We're here. Mercury here on January 18th actually stops going backwards. At this point, like I mentioned earlier in the video, it stops going backwards at 8 degrees Capricorn. The last time it was at 8 degrees Capricorn was December 12th of 2022. So you could start to make the connections. Now Mercury starts to move forward and go through the whole final review process going forward there. And so that's why we talk about retrogrades as revisiting, review, and reclaiming, because we almost hit these points 3 times. It's a zone that we go back and forth over, and now we can start to apply some of the things that came during the retrograde and put them into play and finally solidify the story that is happening. You know, there's other aspects that are made. It's so interesting on this day when Mercury does go direct, because the Sun and Pluto are at 28 degrees. Huge moment here. If you have anything in cardinal signs, that's 28 degrees. If you're a cardinal sign person that have planets in Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, you're really affected by this retrograde. But it's, again, the Mercury stationing direct at 8 degrees isn't by itself in the story here. We have a Pluto Sun thing happening here. Just like in the beginning when we started the retrograde, we had a Venus Pluto connection. There's intensity still through all this. The seriousness of Capricorn, and Capricorn deals in a sense with limitations because it's ruled by Saturn, so it's going to want a slow pacing. So there's slow pacing going on in this whole retrograde, but in it is a bubbling undercurrent of Pluto. And this was the game, and this was the story last year. So if you can make the connections to then, or if you can make the connections to the time zone that I had here, then you can at least have 50% of the tool to deal with the intensity and the seriousness of Pluto, and it bringing up things that are not necessarily working anymore from a more deeper place, and wanting in the end a story. It's a story of regeneration and coming through into something new, but it's not without its purging process, and it's serious, and a little bit of, well, I won't say a little bit, some letting go, so just look to the Capricorn part of your chart for this. Okay, off the top of my head, I will go for each rising sign. I'm doing this off the top of my head because I just want to put this video quick. Like I always say that, and it's always too long. Aries risings, this Mercury retrograde is going to happen in your 10th house of fame and your public status. You're going to have a review period going on there, a restructuring going on. So be careful how you say things, Aries. Fire coming out of your mouth. Jupiter just entered in your sign not too long ago. You're feeling fire under your behind, basically, and wanting to push yourself out there in the world, in your career, public place. But this retrograde is going to ask for some seriousness and some more gelling and structure to how you do push your will out into the world through your career, through your public status. So just watch your words a little bit. Mercury is actually here to help you with that, to construct the words, to be a little bit more focused and a little bit more tactful. My Aries people, my Aries risings, you're rushing out into the world real quick, and sometimes you can learn the lesson of a little bit more tactfulness, seriousness, and style and grace in how you do that in your career chart. So the Taurus rising, this is happening in your Capricorn part of your chart. This has to do with higher learning, higher truth. And, this is like a full-on study. So be a bookworm here, take a course, use Mercury in this process going on in your 9th house of looking for something else to bring into your world, to incorporate into your truth of what it means for you and the restructuring of that. This is actually a really good transit, I think, for the Taurus risings, because I think they like to feel like they're building something and constructing and reviewing, but it's a little frustrating, especially if it gets to a more ethical perspective of things. But that's why we're here to learn as human beings, and to take courses, to go to school, to go to the library or a webinar, and in the end too, though, this is a place of faith and religion, and you can actually seek a different type of truth through that vessel during this retrograde. My Gemini risings, this happened in your 8th house. This is all about shared resources and other people's money, other people's resources you're sharing. It's an intimacy quality here, but there's negotiation going on here, whether it's with what's in the bank accounts with other people, with partners that you are involved in, or how you need to get some resources that have to do with other people. There's a negotiation going on here, and you're going to have to be serious, my Gemini risings, about what it is. Is there a contract you have to sign? You better come to the table with everything lined up and know what the other side is bringing. That's another example there, and whatever it is, Capricorn likes structure. And so it's really in the end about pillars and foundations and structure that's being revamped here, but it's using Mercury mind to do it. So think about that point and part of your life. You could do more research on the 8th house, but that's a quick one there. So My Cancer risings, this is all about relationships and partnerships and stuff. There's the feeling place. Your Cancer risings are coming into the world moon ruled, and your relationship house and partnerships are dealing with Capricorn. So the stability that Capricorn brings, in a sense, is a functional thing that one needs being a Cancer rising. Now, I'm generalizing here, but let's just say it that way. And Mercury here during this retrograde cycle is like wants to bring in more solidifying, in a sense, help contain the emotional process, the emotional story that happens with Cancer risings. And Cancer risings want that. They need that. They want that earth thing to lap up against water-wise, emotionally-wise. But there's some sort of thing here, though, that needs to be dealt with. And I actually think it's super serious. There's some serious conversations that deal with like revamping of relationship structures, and they can be very difficult, of what I mentioned with Venus and Capricorn being involved and Pluto involved in this. But look to the dates I said earlier in this video about the 7th and 8th, about the 7th and 8th, for some more ingenuity and some more something new to bring in to spice up the relationship, in the sense of bringing a different kind of foundation and pillar to help solidify that relationship, or to bring reality to what is actually, because Capricorn deals with reality because it's ruled by Saturn. And here, there's some reality checks happening during this retrograde cycle in your relationship house. My Leo risings, this is happening 6th house. Pets are involved in here, systems and things you do every day, the day-by-day things, in a sense, how you work. Sometimes you could connect this to your body as a system. You're going to have a revamping of your system here and a reclaiming of that. This could be difficult in a sense, because I think here with the 6th house, something you can miss things sometimes. But here is where you check your to-do lists. How you Leo risings, how you formulate your day, or how you get through the day or get through your work or through projects, or how you deal with your system as your body as a system, it actually can be in play here. So you want to like reclaim that. Pull out the piece of paper, pull out the notepad, and start writing down the structural things, the structural needs that you need to have to function day by day, and look to bring in something new here. This is what this retrograde cycle is happening. And there, I know it's so practical and simple and not exciting and actually effing boring, my Leo risings, but you need this earth energy. You need this solidification to happen. Virgo risings, 5th house, creative output in the end here. We're dealing with you in your knack for systems. You being Mercury ruled, this is big. Every Mercury retrograde is big for you. So you want to go into how you creatively output, how you creatively construct and break that down the way you do, and use Mercury and Capricorn to get to the depth of this place, and to bring in tools, to bring in a different mental attitude in how you create and how you envision something, and then how you take the vision or the idea and then put it into a world form, a tangible form. And so the Mercury and Capricorn here is asking you to go to school in this area. I'm like, hey, there's some rules that you need here. Or you take some of the old rules out and you bring some of the new rules in when it comes to your creative out and process. But this is good. You want this, actually. Your Virgo risings like this thing because you're flowing with other earth signs. So that's what's happening there. My Libra risings, 4th house, is all about home, family, past memories, lineages, and the story of that. And, the foundational work. And Capricorn deals with foundations. And this is happening in the foundational place in your chart. I think this could be really challenging for you compared to some other signs here that are dealing with this Mercury retrograde. But what you want to do is be serious here. Take your Venus ruled self and get serious. Since this beginning of the retrograde cycle, like I said in the beginning of this video, is connected to Venus, your ruling planet. The relationships that happen in the past or within current family structures, home structures, or memories from the past that deal with relationships are in play here. And this is where, some seriousness can happen in communications with others in this realm. And the negotiation, it'll feel like that's going to happen, which I think you're into the politics of relationships, Venus or Libra risings. That's kind of your deal. But I think here it might be difficult at first. But if you can get to a place that it's somewhat harmonizing, that's where Venus can come into play. But Mercury can show itself of being very straightforward. I mean, even through a review process, it's hard to be straightforward, but being straightforward during the whole time and not letting emotions sidetrack and just trying to keep steady the way Capricorn does with this area of your chart. Scorpio rising is happening to your third house of like your immediate surroundings and siblings, and in the sense how you start to process and think. Think you all need this, and you want to be focused in your way of relating to your immediate surroundings and people, your neighbors, in a sense, sometimes friends, siblings, certain things around you. You want to bring more structure to it, and it's so effing boring, but I think it's practical here, considering what you've been through this year with the eclipses, and that you could take this like winter time, or in the northern hemisphere, but summer, I know it's summer down there in the southern, but I think the seriousness here can actually tame one's emotional content. Scorpio risings who are ruled by Mars, who in a sense are secretly dealing with emotional intensity of all the time, and use this Mercury retrograde in Capricorn to filter those emotions through foundational work, through foundations, through communication, and how you construct the words, the ideas, the opinions in your head through a serious practical earth sign like Capricorn, and not let your emotions and intensity and needs to control everything in an unbalanced way. Here's where you can balance it, still feel like you're yourself, and still feel like you can get what you need. So my Sagittarian risings, second house, is all about money. This is full negotiation. I wouldn't doubt it if you were dealing with trying to get some money from somewhere, or you're creating a money resource situation, and then you're just like, oh, I got to get a bookkeeper. I need a lawyer. I need people to look at my resources. I need an accountant. I need someone to review my spreadsheets. I need to revamp all this stuff, because that's what's happening in your money and resources house. And Mercury in retrograde in Capricorn here is looking for like new rule sets to put into play here, and reviewing the rule sets and how you use those structures, those little those ways of dealing with resources, and the creation of resources is happening here in the second house. So that's what's up there. Don't mess around here. Reel things back, my Sag risings, because I know you don't want to. Right now, Jupiter's in Aries, connecting to another part of your chart. You want to push forward, but you want to get serious here, man. Rein in the bank account. Look at your expenses. This is what Mercury and Capricorn in retrograde is asking you to do, but it goes on a deeper level. It goes to an old story of how you look at resources and how you do make money, and where resources came from in your life, or who taught you, or if they did your environment when you were younger, what creating resources and how resources are. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because of Venus in the beginning of this cycle and Pluto being involved at the end of the retrograde. That's where that's coming from. My Capricorn rising, this is like everything right now. This could be tough for you, but I want you to realize here that you need to get your head straight, your mental capacity straight. I need you to get some rest. The workaholic thing, or the grinding that happens with Capricorn risings, you're affected by this retrograde. Even though Mercury deals with the mind, it does affect the nervous system. So your vitality, how quick your mind is, for you, if your Capricorn rising is in play here, and you're going to have to slow down more than usual, actually, of how you move in the world, how you negotiate, communicate, and are relating to things. Everything's in play there. That's why I'm suggesting that you bring in something that calms your brain, that deals with the internal anxiety and worry that can happen with Capricorn risings, to have a clear mind. And you're going to have some tough moments here during this cycle. Just use the ingenuity that's going to come on the 7th and 8th of January. Use the end of the cycle with Pluto to take things out of your mind that are poisonous and are not functioning anymore, and to let them go. And that is a quicker view of that for you. My Aquarius risings, this happens in your 12th house, subconscious thoughts, deals with places of rejuvenation internally, old school ways we're dealing with illness in a sense, certain things, mental health at times. I will tell you here that I think there's a flow here for you, because Mercury in Capricorn, ruled by Saturn. You're a Saturn ruled person. I think you can make this flow. You take some time out of certain things. I think Aquarius risings live in their heads in a different kind of way, not like a Gemini would or a Virgo would. But I think here you actually have another brilliant, especially on that January 7th and 8th days of the retrograde, you have something healing that's going to come through your world and your mind. And it might not be dramatic, but it's practical, something very practical. It's something new, possibly, which you dig and like, my Aquarius risings, but there's something here with like an internal healing, an internal inward view, and a restructuring review of that place. So that's where it's happening there. And finally, my Pisces risings, 11th house of community, friends, hopes, and wishes. You need structure. Mercury in Capricorn brings that, the review of that. You want this. You need it. Don't run away from it. Don't run away from the reality of Capricorn. You want to put this into play. You want to use this. You want to use the constructive rules and boundaries and containers that Capricorn brings, that Mercury in Capricorn brings, to help you communicate in that realm of friends and patrons and community, to get your hopes and wishes solidified so they're not some dreamy whatever floating out in the ethers that you haven't already a pathway to, but you need to take those things and then bring them into the real world and then start to construct them. And you're going to need help. And you're going to need help from your friends, and you're going to need help from community, and you need a timeline. You need an outline, to construct things in a way where you're presenting it to a bunch of people who can help you, and their resources who will back you up. But you need to come across serious and not be flaky about this stuff, because you have a flaky stigma about you all, and I know you're not all that, but if you're really wanting to put things into play here, this Mercury retrograde process is going to show you the faults in that, and it's going to want you, and if you take advantage of this, to adding pillars and foundations in that part of your chart, which is called the 11th house. That's it. That's what I have to say today. Wanted to do this video. I needed to put it out. One more thing. We're at the end of the year. We're ending it with a Mercury retrograde. We're ending it really on a serious note. And I think this is good. For everything that we've been through in the last year with eclipses and even a lot of the other transits, maybe on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, you don't go too wild and crazy, but you do toast with whatever drink you want. And to be like, well, something's moving and changing right now. I got a review process during the retrograde, but stuff is changing. There's a shift happening. We usually feel this at the end of the year, but the planetary transits with Jupiter in Aries right now and this Capricorn energy review, it is cardinal energy in astrology, and cardinals initiating, and it brings something new and something to let go and bring something new. So remember that, but keep it serious. I'm not saying not to have fun, but I'm saying be practical about it and know that the universe always has your back. And the way you can do that and connect with that is to take a step back, to look at what you have, to look at what's real, and what, in a sense, how lucky and grateful you are to be on this planet. And if things aren't flowing for you and you're having a rough days, then use this retrograde to restructure your outlook. And if you want to take the outlook to the next year, you can. If it's just for the next month, you can. But take advantage of that and ritualize it. My famous thing of ritualizing it in an earthbound, practical, chill way. And you'll be able to climb that mountain eventually. Later this year, there'll be other things that happen if you solidify it here and have a clear space in here. And you say Happy New Year to yourself with that clear space. The mountain is there for you to climb, and you'll effing do it. That's the attitude I'm taking. I'm Sparkles of Gold, Nicolas Polymonakos. Check out my live stream video that I did with live call-ins. I got another one coming in here, but if you want to see what I'm doing and what I'm about to do, I'm taking live chart readings on YouTube. I'm doing them once to twice a month. You can look at my past video. I'll put it right up here. I love you all. Happy New Year, and I'll see you on the next video.